With both chambers of Congress back in session this week, President Biden's request for billions of dollars in spending for Ukraine has emerged as an urgent topic on Capitol Hill. Now, Republicans insist that any Ukraine package must be conditioned on legislating solutions to the border crisis, our own border crisis. We saw an average of more than 8,000 illegal crossings a day this fall. Now, will Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats jeopardize aid to Ukraine over fixing our own border? Joining now to discuss this and more, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. He serves, excuse me, on the Senate Committee of Homeland Security and Government Affairs, the Senate Budget Committee, and the Senate Finance Committee. Senator, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Hello, Tony. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
I did. And you?
Had a great. Yep, had all the family, ate too much.
Well, it's just a blessing to be away from D.C., so I understand that. So let's talk about the speaker today at a stop in Sarasota, Florida, made very clear that any additional funding for Ukraine would be conditioned upon addressing our own open border and between the United States and Mexico. That's something the House is fixed on, but there are many Republicans in the Senate that agree.
Absolutely. And by the way, not just legislative fixes, because we have a lawless administration. We have a president that wants an open border. And so we do need to change the law. I mean, we need to have a much higher standard than credible fear. There's, return to Mexico policy, third safe country. There are a number of things we have to change legislatively, but what we absolutely must do is make any funding to Ukraine contingent on actually securing the border. And that means benchmarks, metrics. The metric we should use is number of migrants entering America, no matter how they come in, whether they're encountered and processed and released, or whether we detect them as gotaways. Number of migrants enter this country, we set up a benchmark. And by the way, President Trump pretty well secured the border in 12 months once he had returned Mexico in place. From his peak to his trough was 12 months.
Right.
We should expect the same thing from this administration. So no funding until you actually achieve those benchmarks on a month-by-month basis.
I think that's extremely important because they are asking for more money to hire more Border Patrol agents, more technology, overtime pay, boosting the pay. But how does that help if the policies are actually the same? So we need to be looking at not outputs, but outcomes. How do we solve the problem at the border?
Oh, yeah. And quite honestly, providing this administration more money at the border, they're just going to speed up the processing, dispersing. That's been their whole goal.
Right.
That's why they think their policy is a success. We don't have a crisis on the border. We've just gotten really efficient at encountering, processing, dispersing more than 6 million illegal immigrants into this country during their administration. So, no, giving them, we don't need money for the border. We obviously need Border Patrol agents. We need to let them do their job. I mean, that's the biggest problem is they're just getting so dispirited because this administration's, just been awful to Border Patrol agents, and they haven't let them do their job.
Extremely important point. It's not about money. It is about the will to do what needs to be done, and that is to secure the southern border. Now, Senator Johnson, I want to ask you an important question. I know where the House stands on this. In the Senate, they have to have 60 votes to advance something. That means if 10 Republicans join with the Democrats and abandon their fellow Republicans on these border security issues, it's all for naught. Do you think the Republicans in the Senate will stand firm on this?
Well, unfortunately, it only needs 9. And I've been making the point now for literally months that we need to stop taking whatever the Democrats want and finding just enough Republicans to join them to pass their priorities. That has to end. Particularly when you're looking at an open border being a clear and present danger to America. Democrats, the president obviously wants funding for Ukraine. A lot of Republicans do. I'm certainly sympathetic with the courageous people of Ukraine. But what must come first is our own homeland, our own national security. And that right now is in grave peril because of President Biden's open border policy. So you've got to say your priorities. And our top priority has to be to secure that border. This is the only leverage we have with a lawless administration. We must use that leverage. And so all we have to do is make sure that 41 Republicans deny cloture on any bill that doesn't include strong metrics that require him President Biden to secure the border, meet those metrics before money starts flowing.
So what is your sense from your colleagues? Do you have those 41 votes?
Well, we haven't done a whip count on it because, unfortunately, our leader supports the Ukrainian package, and I'm afraid our leader is leading negotiations that will just focus on legislative language and won't require the metrics, the benchmarks that have to be met. So, we're making the point. I haven't done a total whip count. I've literally in lunch, I've asked people to raise their hand. I got a pretty large majority of the conference to say that ought to be our red line, but I couldn't tell you that we for sure have 41 votes.
All right. Well, Senator, as this progresses along, we're going to have you back on to tell us what we need to do, what our folks across the country need to do to weigh in on this to address what you point out rightfully is a top priority, securing our own country. Senator Ron Johnson, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us on this Monday.
Stay well.